Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
In my travels here and there, I've been speaking on different great devotees of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are as deep as Mahaprabhu himself. To understand is not possible unless we ourselves come to that level. But by hearing of their pastimes, we can also attain a desire to enter those pastimes, to serve the Lord and His devotees. These pastimes should be heard by devotees with faith in the Lord and His devotees. To non-devotees, they may seem like ordinary exchanges between ordinary people, but the mundane rasa only appears to give happiness, but cannot give actual happiness, because it's in mundane rasa is produced out of an exchange between two beings desiring their own individual sense gratification, desiring to enjoy the other. Whereas the actual rasa or spiritual rasa is the happiness experienced by one who doesn't think of his own happiness, who in exchanges with others thinks of the benefit of others. So this intrinsic difference is there, which the non-devotees cannot understand. And when they are presented with the subject matter of Krishna's pastimes, they simply make actually ridiculous comments, which exhibits their learned foolishness. That's why we should always hear about Krishna and his devotees from devotees, or at least from persons aspiring to be devotees, and not from foolish mundane people who can only interpret the Lord's pastimes according to their own perverted understanding. But today we'll speak about, or I'll speak about, to be more precise, Gadadhara Pandit. You can also speak. Now I'm going to. Gadadhara Pandit Prabhu, who among all the deep companions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, not that it's for us to judge, but he's maybe the deepest, in as much as his feelings for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are very, very deep, and his nature is also very deep. All the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have their own individual personalities by which they serve and give pleasure to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Nityananda Prabhu is very ebullient. It means extroverted, outgoing, and you know what is the nature of Nityananda Prabhu. Transcendental madman. Gadadhara Pandit Prabhu is very, very deep. He was constant companion of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from their childhood. As with many of these devotees, there are different opinions about his place of appearance within this world, but the generally accepted opinion is that he appeared in the village Belitigram, which was within the district of Chattogram, which is presently in Bangladesh. His father's name was Sri Madhav Mishra, and his mother's Ratnavati Devi. Madhav Mishra was a court pandit of the king of Kandy, which is near Bharatpur in Bengal, where the Shripat, or place of worship of Gadadhara Pandit, is there. It seems that in very early age Gadadhara came to Navadvip, because there's no record of any pastimes of his in Chattogram. In Navadvip, Madhav Mishra, his house was just close to that of Jagannath Mishra. They are both Mishras, but not directly related. But they were so close that Ratnavati Devi and Sachi Devi were like two sisters. They were in the village relationship. When people are living very close together, then people in Bengal up to today, in the village they'll think of other men in the village of the same age as brothers, and the women will think of each other as sisters. So they were always coming and going to each other's houses. So it was natural that Gadadhara, he was born a little bit after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Oh no, it said here he lived in that Beleti until he was 12. At that age, he moved to, his father moved to Navadip. His younger brother was named Baninath. He was a brahmachari throughout his life. He's sometimes called Gadadhara Pandit Goswami. He was just a little younger than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and from the beginning of life, they were constant companions. And throughout all the pastimes, you have to forgive me because the notes are all in different places, so I have to go here and there, yes. In their childhood, they would always play together, and they didn't see any distinction between each other's houses, because each house was like each other's house. And so sometimes Gadadhara would go to Jagannath Mishra's house and be fed by Shachi Devi there, and sometimes Nimai would go to Madhav Mishra's house and Ratnavati Devi would feed him something. So very affectionate, family-like relationship. They studied together at the same school. Even though Gadadhara was a few years younger, they were very close. And throughout life, you will find the descriptions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's principal pastimes that Gadadhara was always present. After Mahaprabhu and his devotees played in the Ganga after the deliverance of Jagai and Madhai, Gadadhara was there. In the amazing dramas that Mahaprabhu enacted at the house of Chandrasekhar, Gadadhara was also present, and Gadadhara played the role of a Vaikuntha Lakshmi, which actually he's described as being. He was there, and when Mahaprabhu was performing kirtan every night in the house of Gadadhara, Srivas Pandit, Gadadhara was always present. During Mahaprabhu's showing his wonderful form, the Shat Praharya Mahaprakash in the house of Srivas, Gadadhara was also present. He was there when Mahaprabhu went to the house of the Kazi, Chand Kazi. When Mahaprabhu took sannyas, Gadadhara was one of the few companions with him there. And on his journey to Puri, Gadadhara accompanied him. He was with him throughout his Navadvip Leela. And then he accompanied him also on the journey to Puri and remained in Puri throughout his life as a constant companion of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and engaged in so many wonderful pastimes with him there, such as cleaning the Gundicha temple, attending the Rath Yatra, playing in the waters of Narendra Sarovar, and so on. So in childhood they were going to school together, and Nimai from the beginning of life, Gadadhara was a strict brahmachari and very grave and fully dedicated to Krishna. But Mahaprabhu in his childhood was showing the pastimes of scholarship. So he would like to meet others on the path outside the school and challenge them. Just like in the modern world, in less civilized countries like the one you and I come from, it's quite common that boys like to physically fight and show who's the best. So a more civilized form of that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took part in that he would meet the other young boys and challenge them. What do you know? Tell me what you have learned. And then he would, whatever they would say, he would defeat it. And then he'd say, so you accept my explanation? And say, and the others would say, oh yes, you've explained very well. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would defeat his own position. And in this way show that his own position, which he defeated them with, that was also deficient. And in this way completely humiliate them. But everyone was very happy to be defeated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. However, Gadadhara used to think that he's too, I don't like this. He's talking all these scholarly things. He's my friend, but I just want to talk about Krishna. So Gadadhara used to avoid him. But after the school, he would try and take a different path. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu once met him on the path and said, "Now Gadadhara, you can't get away. Now you discuss with me." And he said, he asked him, "Now you tell me, what is the meaning of mukti according to Shastra?" And Gadadhara explained according to Shastra, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just said, "No, you don't know anything. You haven't explained properly." So he would give he is the master of Saraswati. So he defeated his position. So the famous story is that Gadadhara, how he was a great friend of Mukunda Datta, who was also a childhood companion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and also from the same area, Chattogram. So how Mukunda Datta brought him to Pundarik Vidyanidhi, the well-known story of how he accepted initiation from Pundarik Vidyanidhi, which I won't explain here because I explained it elsewhere, discussing about Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Yeah, from childhood Gadadhara was very grave and deep and didn't mix up so much with others. He would remain alone and chant the holy names of the Lord. This characteristic remained throughout. When we say throughout his life, this means it's his eternal characteristic in the service of the Lord. So he was trying in his childhood, he would avoid Nimai, although he loved him, but when he saw him in his bellicose mood, he would aggressive mood, he would avoid him. But Nimai, seeing this and seeing Gadadhara's great devotion to Krishna, said, "Don't you worry, Gadadhara. Within a short time, I'll become such a Vaishnava that even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva will come to see me." So Gadadhara and others thought of this Nimai as being really too arrogant, and what's he saying? So in this way, Nimai, Vishvamba, passed his youth as a great scholar, as the darling of all the inhabitants of Navadvip, who were often completely frustrated by his naughty pastimes. The brahmanas would be standing in the Ganga reciting Gayatri, and he would go and pull their legs and make them fall over in the Ganga and spit Ganga water on them. So after they took, he'd fill up his well and spray it all over them after they took bath. So again they'd have to take bath. Although not realizing that this is Super Ganga, more pure. Ganga comes from the foot of Lord Vishnu, and this is coming from the mouth of Lord Vishnu. So they would have to take bath again and again. So being very frustrated by him, they were wondering when he was going to grow up. But instead, he became more mad after he came back from Gaya, and after initiation by Ishvarapuri, he appeared to become completely mad in love of Krishna. And all the Vaishnavas were very happy because they used to say that, "Oh, he's such a learned and influential person that if he were to become a Vaishnava, then surely the whole world would follow." Which is what happened after he came back from Gaya. He was fully intoxicated with love of Krishna. Now Gadadhara first got this news. He was one morning in the house of Srivas Pandit. All the Vaishnavas used to go to his Srivas Pandit's house every morning, because in his courtyard there was a huge kunda tree which gave the flower kunda with practically unlimited flowers. So all the Vaishnavas would come there and they would each one would take as many flowers as they liked for performing puja. That's it. common morning activity. You'll see early in the morning, everyone comes out and they're picking flowers. Not in this country. In Bengal, in the Vaishnava villages, everyone will be out early in the morning. So this tree gave unlimited, it's a transcendental tree. It gave unlimited flowers. So all the Vaishnavas would come together early in the morning. And one morning, Sriman Pandit, one of the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, came and gave the news. Have you heard the news? He looks so happy. Oh, why is he so happy? Don't you know the news? That Nimai Pandit has returned from Gaya and he's become a great Vaishnava. He took initiation from Ishvara Puri, who was well known to all the Vaishnavas there. Ishvara Puri had previously lived in the house of Gopinath Acharya in Navadvip. And actually when Ishvara Puri is very much impressed by Gadadhara because he's very grave and deep Vaishnava. Even as a young boy, he was very sober and very staunch and rigid in his practices. So Ishvara Puri, being very pleased with him, taught Gadadhara from his own book, which he had composed. So he explained that he took initiation from Ishvara Puri, and now he's given up his scholarly arrogance and has become the most humble Vaishnava. He's always falling at the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas and begging for their mercy and calling out the names Hari, Krishna, Yadav, Gopal, Govinda, Madhusudan, and swooning in ecstasy. So when they heard this, all the devotees, they very blissfully started chanting the holy names of the Lord. And Sriman Pandit informed them that he was coming on behalf of Nimai to request them, on Nimai's request, that they should all proceed to the house of Shuklamba Brahmachari. Of all the houses, the most Shuklamba, among Mahaprabhu's devotees in Navadvip, Shuklamba and Sridhar were very poor, but he just means they were rich with love of Krishna, but with very, very poor existence they were passing. So Mahaprabhu asked them, you all come and meet at the house. You'll all meet at Shuklamba. So please call all the Vaishnavas. So Gadadhara, he went there and he hid himself so that he couldn't be seen by Mahaprabhu. He wanted to see what's going on. Is this what's actually happening? Is this real or what's going on? So all the other Vaishnavas came, and then Vishvambara himself appeared there and greeted him, but he didn't recognize them because he was in ecstasy of love of Krishna. So then they began to recite some verse describing the nature, the exalted nature of Bhakti, upon hearing which Vishvambara, who was in a trance-like condition, became almost violently or very strongly emotional, and seeing one pillar in the house, he rushed to embrace that as if it was Krishna. But it being in the house of Shuklamba, very roughly built, the pillar collapsed as he was calling out, "Where is my Krishna? Where is my Krishna?" He fell down and the pillar fell down with him. So lying there, his hair scattered all around, the other devotees present, they also, becoming absorbed in the ecstasy that was emanating from Vishvambara, they also fell down in separation from Krishna. and so did Gadadhara. So, upon coming to external consciousness, Vishvambara, crying and crying, called out again, "Oh my Krishna, oh my Master, where are you? Where have you gone?" And then again fell to the ground. So like this, he was crying, getting up, and falling, and crying. Although he wasn't aware of any pain, and the whole of Shuklamba's house became filled with ecstatic love of Krishna. So this was going on, and at some point Mahaprabhu became a little steady in his emotions, and he heard the sound of crying from another room within the house, and he asked, "Who is there within that room? Who is that crying?" And Shuklamba replied, "Your Gadadhara." So in this way, Shuklamba underscored, or he established that Gadadhara, your Gadadhara, that he is of you. He is not anyone else's Gadadhara. Your Gadadhara. Very significant words. So Vishvambara went in to see Gadadhara sitting with his head down and crying, which pleased him so much, and said, "Oh Gadadhara, you've been a great devotee since your very birth. I wasted so many years in nonsense activities, but you were always absorbed in love of Krishna. So, but now I'm trying to find Krishna. I got Krishna, but again I lost him, and again he fell down." So like this, he's getting up, falling down, getting up and falling down, and recognizing his Gadadhara, which we'll discuss more a little later. So all the devotees were very, very happy that this Vishvambara, who they loved so much since his very childhood, but who in anguish they saw simply studying grammar and wrangling over logical points, now converted into the greatest Vaishnava, greater than they could have ever imagined. So Gadadhara used to come regularly, his habit since childhood of coming to the house of Vishvambara, and one particular service that Gadadhara took up, that was his particular service, was to bring tambul to Vishvambara. Tambul means palm leaves with betel nut. So in his pastimes as a grihastha, Mahaprabhu used to choose them. You chew. So one time when Gadadhara came, he found Nimai, as usual, absorbed in ecstasy. And Sachimata was so much concerned that this Nimai, he simply cries and chants the names of the Lord. He doesn't speak to his wife. He doesn't even do his puja. He's just completely forgotten about everything. So one time Gadadhara came and said, Nimai, seeing him, said, "Where is that beautiful, dark complexioned young boy who wears beautiful, shining yellow garments?" And saying this, he was crying, and so many devotees would come and say, where is that Krishna? Where is that beautiful dark boy? And no one knew what to say to him. They were just, what can we say? He's simply absorbed in the painful ecstasy of separation from Krishna. And no one knew what to say. But Gadadhara, thinking carefully, told him that, "Do not be distressed. Krishna is with you. Krishna is present within your heart." But when he heard this, Then Nimai started ripping with his nails, started ripping at his chest. That, oh, he's in my heart, let me see him. But Gadadhara quickly grabbed his hands and stopped. But said, Gadadhara, let me free. I can't bear to go on without seeing Krishna. Gadadhara said, you just relax, don't worry. Krishna will come very soon. And then Vishwambara became pacified. Seeing this, Sachimata was very impressed. She thought, this boy is very intelligent. He knows how to do. She didn't know what to say to him, what to do, how to pacify him. She had no idea, but she saw that Gadadhara, he knows how to behave with my boy so that he doesn't harm himself or doesn't suffer this pain of separation from Krishna. So she told Gadadhara, you are very intelligent. You please stay with my boy always and look after him. So Gadadhara was among the chief companions of Mahaprabhu in his Navadvip Leela, along with Nityananda, Haridas Thakur, Srivas Pandit. These were all the Advaita Acharya. These were the chief companions. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhara, Srivas, Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. So many devotees were participating with him in these pastimes. So Gadadhara Pandit is identified with Srimati Radharani. We'll discuss that a little later. So the Radha Krishna of Vrajalila, Rai Kanai, as they're called by their intimate friends, became in Navadvip Leela Gaur Gadadhara, or known as Gadai Gauranga. Gadadhara, his name is a little bit long, so they used to pet name, just like Radharani is called Rai and Krishna is called Kanu. So Gadadhara's short name is Gadai. And Gauranga is Gaura. Gaura. Not Gaura, Gaura. A little bit different. So, just as Rai Kanai would wander through the forests of Vrindavan, enjoying wonderful pastimes, singing and dancing with all their companions. So in the 9 islands of Navadvip, assisted by their same devotees who had come again in Navadvip Leela, Gaura Leela, they would enjoy pastimes as Gadai Gauranga. One day, after wandering throughout the town of Navadvip, Vishwambara came to a forest outside the town and sat down in a grove, a kunja, which reminded him of his pastimes in Vrajalila. Seeing this, Mukunda Datta began to sing kirtan exactly suitable for those pastimes. The Purvarag, or the songs of courtship of Radha and Krishna, while Gadadhara collected some flowers from the creepers and bushes and trees all around and made a very beautiful Vanamala. What's that we sing? Kala deshe Vanamala kare jhalana. So a very beautiful garland of forest flowers made by Gadadhara. Sometimes the devotees in Bengal, they sing the akkar, or it means a ornament to that line, that they sing that the Vanamala worn by, just like you sing Shankar Bhaja going to be Madhu, Madhu, Madhu. So to go with that line, they say Gadadhara Gatar Mala. So the mala is, the vana mala, the forest flower mala is made by Gadadhara. So he made a very beautiful garland of forest flowers, and just in the same way that Srimati Radharani used to offer garlands to Krishna, so Gadadhara did. So all the devotees around could see that this Gaur Gadadhara in the forest of Navadip are the same Radha Krishna of the forest of Braja, and they recognized their own positions. So they were singing songs and dancing very gracefully, while Gaura brought Gadadhara, took him by the hand and sat him by his side and under a tree. And Advaita Acharya offered Arti. Nityananda Balaram sat on the right side of the Lord with Gadadhara on the left. So this is the description. Jayo Jayo Gaura Chande Arati Koshobha. And Srivas decorated everyone with flower garlands, and in this way they enjoyed the pastimes of Navadvip, which went on and on and on, and each day the devotees were reaching the limit of ecstasy, of love of Krishna in the kirtan pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Navadvip. And each day the ecstasy increased 1,000,000 times, and the next day after that the ecstasy would increase 1,000,000 times, and the devotees they had no idea. They just imagined that this will go on forever. We shall remain here forever, dancing in the courtyard of Srivas and throughout the streets of Navadvip, with Gaura, who is living at home with Vishnu Priya, and this is the ultimate ecstasy, and this will go on forever. One day, he left. No warning. Suddenly, there was no Navadvip Leela, all finished, gone. Gadadhara went with him. He was there when Mahaprabhu took sannyas. No longer Vishramba Mishra. Now he is Sri Krishna Chaitanya, and he followed behind him, and he was there in the group that went to Nilachal, Puri, on the request of Shachi Mata. So when Mahaprabhu took up residence in Puri, he gave a place for Gadadhara to stay, remote place. Now that's connected with the town of Puri, but it was at that time that Jameshwar, the place he gave him to stay, it was a remote place. Gadadhara liked to be a little separate and stay there. And Mahaprabhu gave him the service of Gopinath. This one time, while walking on the beach at Puri, Mahaprabhu indicated, "What's here? Dig here." And dug up the deity of Gopinath. And he gave to Gadadhara, "And you stay here, in this secluded place." The residence of the other Vaishnavas, that was close by. That area is now called Gaura Bhatchai, means the place of residence of the Gauriyas. So there was a little, but Gadadhara's place was in the Tota, the garden, a little bit distance from all the others where they were living, and Mahaprabhu's residence was further on, closer to the temple, just opposite Sarvabhauma's house, at the house of Kashi Mishra. So he was living there, and his worship of the deity, the Gopinath, came to be known as Tota Gopinath, because he was in the garden. It was a very beautiful garden maintained there by Gadadhara, and he worshipped Gopinath there. And Mahaprabhu would come every day to hear recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhara. During the night, Mahaprabhu would hear about Krishna from Swarup Damodar and Rai Ramananda. During the day he had various pastimes, visiting the temple, engaging in Sankirtan with his devotees, visiting different devotees' homes to take his lunch prasad. And one of his regular daily activities was coming to hear Bhagavatam. Gadadhara would recite Bhagavatam, and all the devotees would come and hear Gadadhara recite for Mahaprabhu's pleasure. And especially Mahaprabhu liked to hear again and again from Gadadhara the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj from the Bhagavatam. So this was Gadadhara's regular service. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Gadadhara that he gave him the order that you just stay here and worship Gopinath. Because if you're Pujari, means actually they don't go anywhere. They just stay there. Traditionally, Pujaris, they didn't go anywhere. They just stay there. They had their residence would be next to the temple, and they would in their childhood they would be taught by their father how to do everything, and they would just stay there. They didn't go on pilgrimage. They were with the Lord, so they didn't need to go on pilgrimage. They would just stay there. And their son, they would train up, and like that, generation after generation. They didn't go anywhere. They just stayed right there. That's why Brahmins are required in a mode of goodness, very peaceful and satisfying, just to worship the Lord. So Mahaprabhu told him, you worship Gopinath, you just stay here. This will be what's called Kshetra Sannyas. That you take the vow just to stay in a holy place and never to leave. So Mahaprabhu gave him this instruction, you just remain here in Puri, worship Gopinath. So Gadadhara was very happy because naturally he liked to worship Gopinath, and even more happy because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was residing in Puri. So he could serve Gopinath and always have the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was, during the first 6 years of after taking sannyas, he first went to Puri, then after a short time he left for South India. Then he came back again and he was given his residence at the house of Kashi Mishra. But he was going here and there, sometimes to Bengal, sometimes to Vrindavan. His devotees he had an overwhelming desire to go to Vrindavan, which is why he took sannyas in the first place. He wanted to go to Vrindavan. But he was diverted to Puri, which is not different from Vrindavan. But he was always desiring to go. His devotees were stopping him on one pretext or another. But eventually he set off for Vrindavan. There are two different paths. One can go from Puri. One is a more direct path, which is through the forests of Jharikanda, which he eventually went on. This trip, the first time he tried, he went via Bengal, which there's a straight path along the coast up to Bengal, and then one comes to the Ganga, and then along the path of the Ganga, north, and then left, because when the Ganga comes to Bengal, she makes a steep turn right and comes down to Ganga Sangam. And the rest of our water goes into Bangladesh as the Padma. So that's an easier path. You go north all the way up to north along the coast and inland a bit, and then up the path of the Ganga, Bhagirathi, and then left all the way along the Ganga to Prayag, and then along the path of the Yamuna. That's one way to go, by walking from Puri to Bengal. It's an easier path, and it's a Ganga path. So Mahaprabhu, being by the Ganga is also very auspicious. So first time Mahaprabhu went via Bengal. He was going on the path via Bengal, and so many devotees came with him. Almost all his devotees came with him, including Gadadhara Pandit. Everyone's going. Mahaprabhu's going to Vrindavan via Bengal. Everyone's going. I'm going to. He naturally came along. But Mahaprabhu saw him and reminded him that you have the vow of Kshetra Sannyas. You cannot leave. You have to stay. But Gadadhara told him that Mahaprabhu said, you have to stay in Puri. He said, wherever you are, that is as good as Puri. And to hell with my vow of Kshetra Sannyas. He was a very mild person, Gadadhara. But when he was asked by Mahaprabhu not to go with him, he became a little upset and said, to hell with my vow of Kshetra Sannyas. Then Mahaprabhu said, just stay here. This is just before he was leaving Puri. He said, you just stay here and serve Gopinath. And Gadadhara said that I do that service millions of times over by having the darshan of your lotus feet. Now, before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had engaged him in logical discussions and defeated him, but now Gadadhara was desperately trying not to lose his association, was engaging in some logical discussion how he could stay at the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which lotus of feet were leaving, which he couldn't imagine. Then Mahaprabhu told him that if you give up your service, then the fault will come on me, because you're leaving for my sake. So just stay here and serve Gopinath, and I will be satisfied. But not to be easily or determined not to be dissuaded. Pandit Kohe, Gadadhara said, all the fault will be on my head. But just in case you're worried about that, I won't go with you, but I'll go just behind on my own, away, separate from the group, so at least I can see your lotus feet from a distance. And I won't go with you. I'm not going to go with you, but I'm going to go and have darshan of Shachi Mata. If anyone says, I'm going with you and it's your fault he left his service, you say, no, actually he's just coincidentally going just behind the party. He's not going with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's going to see Shachi Mata. So if in this way there's any fault of giving up my promise, he was prepared to leave the service of Govinda. You don't just leave the service of the deity. You can't do that. But he didn't consider for a moment that I have to serve the deity. I was given this. It's a very serious offense just to leave the deities. But he was prepared to do so. Even Mahaprabhu was telling him not to. He was determined to do so. So he started following behind and Mahaprabhu. And he went as far as Cuttack, which is, let me see, maybe about 60 kilometers, approximately, He went quite a long distance behind the group. Then Mahaprabhu called him and said, call that Gadadhara. Let him come and see me. Krishna's Kaviraj says that the tremendous affection that Gadadhara had for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that his service to Gopinath, which was his very life, being given that service by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and serving Gopinath, but he gave it up like a piece of straw. Anyone ever had can you imagine having any difficulty giving up a piece of straw? You don't even, if a piece of straw sticks to your foot while you're walking along, and you just throw it off, you don't think that, you don't even think about it. It's just, so the service of Gopinath is the ultimate perfection of life. But just like a piece of straw, Gadadhara gave it up, finding a higher perfection to be with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this can only be understood by very, very advanced devotees. Non-devotees can't even begin to understand it. But ordinarily, someone would blame Gadadhara for leaving the service of the deity. The service is the very life of the devotee. So, understanding Gadadhara's heart, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was extremely satisfied. But he took his hand and spoke to him in the anger of love, saying that, I understand that your intention is to give up your vow and to give up your service. So well done. You've done it. Now that is completed. You have given up your service, having come so far away, so many days' journey. You desire to go with me, but that desire is simply a desire for personal happiness. So in this way, you're breaking two religious principles. You broke your vow, and you gave up your service. And by doing this, although you desire your happiness, you're giving me unhappiness. So if you actually desire my happiness, then return to Puri. And if you again argue with me, if you want to say anything more about this, that will be just like, it will be just like you are condemning me. And having said this, without waiting for any more words from Gadadhara, without even considering anything that he might have to say in this matter, he got in a boat to cross the river. Katak, both sides, there's rivers, north and south. Got in the boat and left him behind. That place is still there. Gauranga Ghat in Katak. That is the place of Gadadhara's separation from Gauranga, which he was not able to tolerate. He simply fell down, fainted on the spot. Mahaprabhu ordered Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, you take him and look after him. Take him back with you to Puri. Make sure he goes. He got. So Bhattacharya told Gadadhara, get up. That is Mahaprabhu's Leela. You cannot understand it and you cannot go against it. So Sarvabhauma explained to him that Mahaprabhu appears to be so cruel, but just consider how Krishna gave up his own promise not to fight, to maintain the promise of Bhishma Dev. That Bhishma Dev had promised that today in the fight I will either kill Arjuna or I shall fight so severely that either I shall kill Arjuna or to protect him. The only means that Arjuna can stay alive is if Krishna picks up a weapon and fights with me to protect him. In other words, if Krishna breaks his promise not to take up any weapon, not to fight. So either Bhishma Dev's promise had to be broken, or Arjuna had to be killed, or Krishna's promise had to be broken. And out of these three, Krishna found that breaking his own promise is better. So Krishna didn't want to break his promise. He didn't want to appear as a breaker of vows, but he broke his own. He broke his own vow. He violated his own happiness to maintain the vow of Bhishma Dev. So in the same way, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya pointed out that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would be very happy to have you with him, but he doesn't want that your promise be broken. So he has sent you back in this way. In this way, he's tolerating separation from you, which is very painful for him, just for the sake of protecting you. These are the pastimes of Sri Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in this way, they both sorrowfully returned to Puri. Why should a devotee be sorry to go to Puri? Why should he be unhappy? Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going in the other direction. After Mahaprabhu left this world, again suddenly he left Navadvip, and suddenly he left Puri. There was no intimation. Well, there was. Swarup Damodar had some idea, but otherwise he suddenly left. And all the devotees found it, just like Krishna leaving Vrindavan, all the devotees found Puri to be as if vacant. They couldn't find any happiness there. Anyway, let's go back to the pastimes when Mahaprabhu was there. So, in Chaitanya Bhagavat it's described how Nityananda Prabhu once, when he came to Nilachal from Navadvip, he came to see Gadadhara. And Nityananda and Gadadhara were very close, very